Okay. So welcome everyone to my first podcast with the assistance of a wonderful group of ladies and I guess sponsored or the idea created by Anissa Carruthers from Ladies Lunch, the Ladies Lunch meeting,
The Ladies Meeting.
The Ladies Meeting. I just call it lunch because it's always lunch. But yes, the Ladies Meeting is the actual name. And it's been a great experience being part of this group. And the conversation one day, turned to hormones and how important it is for us to have this conversation with each other. Because not every mother or grandmother tells you these things about hormones. I certainly didn't hear that from mine. And if I didn't say, my name is Marcy Schachter. It's on the screen. But I'm part of a community of people that are all about helping people with wellness, nutrition, supplementation, learning how to eat to heal the body. And I've been part of this company for 5 years, and many of these women are working with me. And so they're all experiencing different levels of, experiences with the hormone issue. And we've all been learning a lot lately. So I'm glad you guys are here to kind of bring some of your knowledge and some of your awarenesses to the group of women that will be listening later. So we're going to start with just a couple of things. I just thought there was a few notes I took today about, the whole thing about menopause. It's often we think of it as something that's going to affect people that are old. And I know I certainly did. And my little story, and I'm going to ask each one of you to share your story, but my story was that my mother never went through anything. Like, I swear she was one of those women that never gained a pound her entire life. She was never crabby. I mean, she got a little nasty occasionally if my dad pushed her buttons, but she managed to get through menopause with none of us knowing anything, because she didn't really seem to have any symptoms. And when I asked her years later, she said, nope, I just sailed through. So I wasn't as fortunate as her. And because she sailed through, she didn't really share much. And so if you're over 35 and you're listening to this, you're headed towards what we often say is the dreaded menopause. And it's not always bad, because it really doesn't have to be that way. And many women, in our media, it's kind of youth obsessed, believe that menopause is sort of, the stigma is it's a slow, steady decline, and we get really kind of freaked out about it when things start happening. But I want to share with you, there's a profound truth that no one's really shared. And this is my experience, that post-menopause, I actually noticed a lot of good things happening. Like, I became more confident, less interested in what other people thought about what I thought or felt, or, I became more powerful in a lot of ways. So I think there's a good side to this whole aging process that a lot of people forget to talk about. And there's a quote from this Dr. Anna Cabeca, who's written a book, and I can share that with the group later. She says menopause brings a higher level of spiritual connection, wisdom, discernment, and judgment. And so I think that's a great takeaway for all of us to look at. There's the good and the bad with all of this. So as every one of you, has gone through or is going through or about to go through this experience, my experience, just real brief, was nobody told me anything. In my 40s, I started having anxiety. I didn't know what it was related to. I remember my husband coming home from work when I lived on Bowen Island, and I didn't know I was premenopausal, and I was feeling quite isolated. And every day he'd come home from his job in the city, and I'd be in Bowen Island, isolated. He'd come home and find me in tears, and I'd be like, I don't know why. And it was like so unlike me to be falling apart that way. And I thought maybe it was the isolation. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't have a lot of friends over there. It was a new community. But later I realized it was really a hormonal thing that was hitting in full on. And I also had fibroids, which they put me on birth control for. And they threw me into immediate menopause as soon as I went off the birth control pills. And I didn't experience great results with birth control, even as a young woman. So my hormones were completely out of whack. I had hot flashes on top of hot flashes on top of hot flashes. There was not a night that I would go through where I wouldn't be sweating through my clothes, so I couldn't wear anything. And people were laughing at me because everywhere I went, I said, "Is it hot in here?" And nobody else was hot. So clue in for me for the longest time that all of these symptoms, anxiety, putting on a big belly one day, looked down at myself and I went, how did my stomach get past my boobs? When did that happen? I don't recall ever having that before. So that was my experience. And truly, I got through it. I don't know how, because I wasn't changing my diet back then. I wasn't aware that these were actual symptoms. And now in hindsight, I go, oh, wow, if I'd only known what I know today, what a difference that might have been. So I'm going to just turn it over to my ladies here. So who would like to just share maybe on, a personal note, what things have been like for you and what you learned and experienced? So I can call on you or you can just jump in.
Do you want me to go, Marcy?
Go for it, Deborah.
Right then. Well, actually, with what you're talking about, I wanted to just share the first little nugget that came to me a number of years ago when I was, anyways, I'm Deborah McDonald from Ottawa, Ontario, but I'm actually in upstate New York right now visiting my daughter who had a baby 3.5 months ago. So talk about hormone changes, right? Going through pregnancy and everything, and then having the baby and everything else. But she's just been doing great, just so you know, and the baby's awesome too. So I'm very fortunate to have this time to share and just be able to work from here or from wherever. Just got back from Mexico, so I worked from there as well a little bit, not too much, but just keeping up with the work and the business and so on. But just to say, one of the first things I wanted to start off with was probably about 15 years ago, I met a gynecologist obstetrician, and he was doing some workshops and seminars. And it was actually linked to the previous company I was with in health and wellness. And he totally shocked the entire room of mainly women, in the audience, because he was talking about, women's health and so on. And he said, you start your menopause around the age of 30. And we all went, what? Are you kidding me? I'm still having babies, or I'm, still PMSing or whatever. What do you mean? And so he just kind of did this little graph thing about how we really are starting to do that after around age 30, 35. And, other people might have other statistics as well if you're talking to other health professionals, but it made me very aware of how I was looking at my body and my hormones and where I'm at, after having children, having a fairly good pregnancy and having good, I didn't have much PMS through my years and so on. But I really started probably in my early 40s, started my perimenopause or whatever they call it. So early menopause. And I didn't realize that this was happening for me, but we had been moving quite a bit, being that I was in the military, or my husband was in the military. So when you have a lot of stress happening in your life and moving from countries to cities and so on, in that particular period of time when I turned 40, I was like, God, I feel like my period's not all that big or much. And so I went to the doctor and they said, your hormone levels are really out of whack and you're not really having much of a period. And I just went, okay, why is that? And they really didn't know. But then when I got back to Canada, a couple of years later, I went to my family doctor and she explained to me what was going on. And she says, when you're under stress, your hormones are completely, they just get thrown off. But I'm like you were saying about your mom, Marcy, is that we manage, right? Women especially, we're taking care of everyone. So we managed, right? We just didn't show our frustrations or some of the different things that were going on or irritability. Sometimes we do, sometimes we didn't. It just depended on what was going on. But I know for me, I wasn't one that would show it. And so you can keep things down a little bit more than we need to be doing. And that's what I learned going forward, as you said, in your 40s, 50s, and now I'm 63. It takes, just all of this the process of going through the different stages of our life to make us see where we're at. But just to get back to, my whole menopause was actually pretty easy and pretty cool. So I'm like your mom, I guess, Marcy, where not a whole lot was showing up. And my mom too, when I asked her about it, she said, honestly, Deb, I don't even remember. Like I asked her probably when she was 70 or something. She said, I don't even remember. I think I just kind of, managed, right? So there wasn't as much attention to it. But now that I have clients and customers that are talking about hormones and so on, what I'm finding is there's so many issues out there. So many issues out there. And so when you have these hormone imbalances, we're bound to have things happening with us, irritability or different changes. There's depression that can happen, but there's also the good side of it too. But when you're kind of going through that period of time, and I certainly can't speak because I'm not a health professional, but just from experiences, you don't know why you're feeling a bit of the ups and downs. Your periods are changing, your sleep patterns are changing, depending on your job or your career is going to have a factor in it. If you have children and you're worried about things or whatever, financial stress, all of that kind of stuff is going to start to play into it. So what I'm trying to say here, Marcy, just very quickly, and I'll let someone else go on, is there's just a whole bunch of stuff piling up on people. And so we have these imbalances. They're going to be affecting our bodies, and we have to deal with it and look for natural ways to help. So that's my way of doing it, is as natural as possible.
No, I'll come back to you after again.
Perfect.
Because I think we're going to have time, but I just wanted to add something in there, that a lot of women that are saying they can't lose weight and their cortisol levels are off the charts and they're tired all the time and they're reaching for caffeine, and if they have wine, they don't sleep very well, and they're just finding themselves fighting a lot of little issues that over time add up to being big issues. And if left untreated, hormonal imbalance can cause some serious problems health-wise. So I think it's really good to just share personally, what you went through. And then we're going to come back to some of the solutions that we know and we've been finding. So Marilyn, would you like to jump in maybe?
Sure. I have been totally the opposite with mine. I have had PMS. I have had all out for my teens, my 20s, my 30s. When I got into my 40s and I started to go in menopause, I really didn't know that I was going into menopause because this was normal. It was just a little worse for me. So I was always supplementing. I've always supplemented to help the PMS, to help anything like that. But I was just felt like I was going crazy. I really thought I was going crazy. And my only experience with people with menopause was hot flashes. My mother-in-law would just sweat. The sweat would just come down her face like unbelievable. And she would just smell really bad. Oh my God, just smell. It was, you couldn't come near her. So when I started to smell, and a friend told me, that's what happened to me. I wasn't really sweating that bad, but I would start every now and then. And a friend came to me one time and said, very good friend it was, and said, I think you should use this product for sweating. And I'm like, well, I use deodorant. Well, do you use deodorant or antiperspirant? They're different. Well, I had no idea they were different. So they told me to use this crystal. So I use it, and then at least the smell disappeared. But that was my first sign that I was actually going through menopause, because that's what I related it to. Whether it really was or not, I don't know. But I would just go crazy, and I would get some hot flashes. Weird times. I was able to sleep. I didn't have too many problems like that or other problems, just feeling like I was going crazy. And my kids would always say, oh my God, Mom, you're going crazy. Calm down. And then they would ask me if I took my supplements or whatever. And I'd say, oh no. Okay. So then I knew that that's what it was. But I also started in my 40s going through the menopause. And luckily seemed to be over a little. They usually say it takes 10 good years, even longer. So if you're going through your 30s, but I seemed to stop not quite to like in my early 50s. So it was kind of like maybe 6 or 7 years. But it was crazy. And I didn't see too much of I guess I gained the weight in the belly like you said you did, but you know what? I didn't even realize that was part of it until you just said that. I'm like, oh, how about that? I don't think I did not know that at all.
Yeah, that's one of the symptoms.
So that was, so I wasn't calm, cool, and collected. I was very
wound up.
Very wild.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. And how about Valerie?
Sure. Oh, good. I'm unmuted. I was muted. Well, this is so interesting. I wish that I'd had this when I was going through menopause. It would have been fabulous to have a little support group to talk with each other.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll just tell you a funny little story at the start. I've had several friends for over 50 years, and we have a birthday group. And I remember in our early 40s going to these birthday groups constantly, and they were talking about dry vag and hormone patches and all those things. And I just kept my mouth shut and ate cake because I really didn't have a clue what they were talking about because I wasn't having those experiences. But what I was having different experiences, but I didn't think they had anything to do because I wasn't having those hot flashes. Anything that they were describing, one of my girlfriends at one of the parties, sometimes she would just break out and she would literally drip. And I kind of kept my mouth shut. I didn't want anybody to know, kind of like your mom, like Deb, like whatever, that I was probably just managing and making it work. But you know what? I realized that I loved how Deborah said we manage. Because what I found is that I was going through things. I had symptoms. I did go to see my doctor because they all said they were going through it. And I said, well, how do you tell? Oh, through the blood test. So I went and got a blood test and my doctor said I was fine. I don't really know what that means, but what it did mean is I didn't need a patch, I guess. But I was tired. I had brain fog. I wasn't sleeping. I was waking up in the morning exhausted. I was finding the quality of my life diminishing over those same 7 or 8 years that everyone else has described, completely different symptoms. And I had no idea I was going through menopause till after I finished. What happened to my period? Oh, that was menopause. Oh my goodness. I had no idea.
I'm just going to interrupt for a sec because we're on a 45-minute thing and I realize I should get to the hour one next time because it's going to cut us off in about 9 minutes. So I know we're going to be a little short on this first one, but it's okay because we're just getting this podcast going. I promise next time I'll get the other version of this Zoom. So I'm going to jump over. Thank you, Valerie, and jump over to Judy. And just real quickly, anything you want to add that we haven't talked about that might be unique for you. And then I'm going to kind of put out some other questions for you guys.
Well, I started experiencing anything that was close to menopause late, like probably, I think, I can't remember. I think I stopped having my period mid 40s, and then much later than that, it seems like to me, I do remember I had hot flashes like you wouldn't believe. I mean, night sweats, I would just like really extreme hot flashes. But, and as I recall then, I don't recall anything. I had no answers, like, no help, supplements, or like, I didn't think there was anything that really could help.
Replacement, or did your doctor ever talk about hormone?
No, I never.
Bioidentical.
My doctor never told me anything like that. I never took anything like that. No, I just suffered.
So it sounds like a lot of us in this particular group, and Anissa, I'm sure you have some things to add, and you're not quite in menopause, right?
Well, I'll just quickly say it was very strange to go to my daughter's wedding, and she already had a 2-year-old, to realize I could still be having kids. It was like this really strange kind of epiphany, and she's just had another one. And seeing that I'm starting to experience some stuff. I'll be 50 in 2 years. But I mean, I've had my doctor monitoring all my stuff and nothing's changed. So I think it's kind of interesting to say that we don't have to have, it's not a rule. And I think that that's something that, like you're saying about your mom, like it doesn't have to be hard. It's kind of like childbirth. Everyone tells you it's really hard. It isn't hard for everybody. So I think we have to be talking and having groups like this. I can't remember, somebody said they had nobody to talk to. Well, and that's why I want to do this, so that we've got more people to keep having conversations and share information and know that not everything has to be hard. And then there are ways to make things easy. So I really appreciate you facilitating this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the conversation, I mean, I've got this book here, you guys. If anybody hasn't got this book, I would recommend the Hack Your Health Habits, because I just started rereading it a little bit today. And the stuff just about hormones alone, it could answer so many confusing questions that women go through about symptoms that they really aren't even aware that, like we often said, we didn't know a belly fat was a hormonal shift thing, that we just thought that was us getting fat,
I'm going to use that excuse from here on in.
So I have only about 5 minutes left or 6 minutes left. So maybe just going around the circle here, like what's one thing that you've done recently, because it's not just about menopause. This is a conversation about aging and hormones too. And the menopause is part of that. But as we age, we've noticed some other different things. And I noticed that your skin doesn't have as much elasticity, and that there's a lack of, brain fog sometimes hits you. Even though you're past menopause, that can last for some women. And I have friends that I know have been in whatever I would call a menopause sort of state for like 20 years. And I don't know if it's diet related or if it's their stress or what. So anybody have anything to add about things that you noted, just a real quick little thing that you might say could help people that you've done, because we're all aging and we're all trying different things. What have you done to make a shift?
I just have one sentence. All my systems were down, respiratory, digestive, all systems down. I think I was malnourished. I believe I was completely malnourished. I think this is a society where we are an unwrap and zap and eat crap. And I was so malnourished. I took my good friend Marcy's advice and got on track and got myself nourished properly, and it has changed my life.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. In moving up to Whistler and living in a resort, we have all of the quick fixes available, but going back to growing sprouts on my counter like my mom did, making sure I have spirulina, all those things that feed your body are so important. And working in a gym, we're always drinking water. So things like that. I think you're right. We're all very much undernourished.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything that you?
I really want to add exercise. I just think that exercise is almost like the fix for anything wrong with you. I really do. With, weight gain, but energy and sleep and brain fog. And the more tired I am, the less I want to exercise. But if I exercise, then the less tired I am. I just think exercise is one of the best things anybody can make yourself kick into doing. And I'm not doing enough.
Okay, I'm going to kick you into doing.
I agree.
All right. Anybody else?
Marcy?
Yeah, last comment.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, just one thing that I do, well, two things that I do is I make sure that I take my supplements. Absolutely. They have to be plant-based and so on. So, we can talk about that another time, but that's something I always do. But meditation is one of the things I started doing in the last 5 years. And I'm still working on trying to do it every single day, but I wake up in the morning and I've got my little meditation that I follow. I can't do it myself, so I use a guided, but it has been absolutely amazing. And then just kind of going into that spiritual journey for all aspects, of your life. So that's a big piece for me right now too. So love it.
That's a good point. Yeah. Anybody else? Marilyns?
I do something like that called tapping.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Tapping and being grateful. Being grateful for feeling the way I do, for feeling as healthy as I am because of everything that I do, with the exercising, with the supplements, with a lot of things. So it's just that really helps. And it's a similar way of meditation. I don't meditate very well, but I can tap really well.
Cool. I like it.
I'm a terrible meditator. Just before this podcast, I went to lie down and I just put these little balls under my neck. I don't know if anybody's ever seen these little rubber balls, and it kind of puts me into the closest thing I would say to a meditative state. So
2 tennis balls in a sock will do the same thing.
Same thing. A friend bought me this, but I have to say, it's like I'm one of those cats that's getting, I don't know, stroked or something. You just kind of, but it de-stresses me immediately. And I know stress is a big factor in our aging process and how we handle all of them we've got to handle. So we're just less than a minute wrapping it up. I want to just thank the ladies, and we're going to continue this. So I think we can go into a little more in-depth next week. And I'll send out some questions ahead of time for maybe the people coming on to think about, so we can have a different kinds of conversation. Maybe go deeper into the food that we're eating, and the type of things that we're doing to combat the symptoms that many of us do face, or to prevent the ones that we're about to face. So thank you all so much. Your contribution to this is going to be really appreciated by many women who are probably just as confused as some of us were. So I'll sign off and wish you all a really good night. And
awesome. And I'll just, for anybody that wants to, watching this video and wants to find out more, they can go to the ladiesmeeting.com/roundtable, and we'll keep updating with information there. So it's the ladiesmeeting.com, and we'll have more info there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.